If the series Invincible is correct, Omni-Man once stopped an asteroid the size of Texas. That sounds impressive, but the scale is hard to imagine. Texas covers around 695,000 square kilometers. It is unclear what Nolan meant exactly, the full surface of the asteroid, or only its cross-section. Either way, the object would be enormous. For comparison, the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs was around 10 kilometers wide. Its mass was close to 1 billion tons. If Nolan told the truth, he changed the path of an object that could weigh thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of billions of tons. With that level of power, every strike from a Viltrumite should destroy entire cities. But that is not what happens in the series. During the fight between Mark and Conquest, windows break across nearby buildings. In reality, the damage should be far worse. Hits with that much force would leave craters the size of major cities. This leads to the main question. How strong is Omni-Man really? If we look at his abilities through real physics, the show may actually reduce how dangerous he is. This video contains spoilers for Invincible. Let's begin. Omni-Man, also known as Nolan Grayson, belongs to the Viltrumite race. They look human, but the similarity ends there. Viltrumites live for thousands of years. They survive extreme injuries. They travel through space without protection. Some scenes even suggest faster than light movement. Official guides and fan databases often claim that an adult Viltrumite can lift around 100 tons. That already sounds absurd. Then you remember one specific scene. During the destruction of the Flaxen world, Omni-Man lifts a gigantic mass of rock. Its weight was probably not hundreds of tons, but tens of thousands. This is no longer a scaling mistake. This is the difference between a very strong creature and a being that almost ignores the normal limits of matter. So where does that power come from? The series gives no clear answer. The comics offer an explanation. Viltrumites supposedly control their bodies on a fundamental level. They can generate inertia in any direction they choose. That explains their flight and resistance to extreme force. It sounds like scientific magic, but the idea is not completely meaningless. Most likely raw muscle power is not the main factor here. Imagine a human weighing 100 kilograms or 220 pounds. You cannot accelerate that mass to the speed of light. It would require almost infinite energy. But what if the force does not affect the whole body at once? What if movement is controlled at the level of individual particles? In simple terms, energy could redistribute inside the body. Instead of pushing the full mass all at once, that idea at least partially explains why Omni-Man can perform actions that look impossible. At one point, Nolan tells Mark that he pushed an asteroid the size of Texas away from Earth. The scale matters here. We are not talking about a house, not even a dinosaur-killing asteroid. We are talking about Texas. Even if Nolan exaggerated, the object would still have monstrous mass. To change its trajectory, being very strong would not be enough. No muscles could solve that problem. Even strength measured in millions of tons would still feel insufficient. That means another mechanism must exist, at least in theory. Viltrumites recover from severe injuries. Destroyed organs, punctured bodies, and extreme internal damage are not always fatal to them. In the comics, they can even regrow lost limbs, but then another question appears. Why do some Viltrumites use prosthetics? According to the story, they were injured during the spread of a virus that weakened their bodies. Because of that, regeneration became impossible. There is also an important limitation. Critical damage to the brain or heart means death. And strangely enough, that part feels realistic. Nature already shows similar examples. Many creatures on Earth can regrow body parts. Lizards regrow tails. Crabs restore claws. Some amphibians can rebuild damaged tissue. Even the human body constantly repairs itself, although much more slowly. The real issue is scale. In theory, advanced genetic engineering could create an organism with extremely fast regeneration. In the comics, Viltrumite abilities appeared through evolution. That is difficult to imagine. Genetic modification feels like a more believable explanation. Could Viltrumites make themselves even more invulnerable? Possibly. Then another question appears. Why did they not remove all weaknesses completely through science and technology? There is a dark but logical explanation. Maybe this was intentional. Viltrumite society is built around the idea of strength. The weak die. The strong survive. If the risk of death disappears, natural selection disappears too. And with it, the motivation to become stronger. In other words, Viltrumites may have deliberately preserved their vulnerabilities. That fits the spirit of their civilization very well. But everything we discussed so far becomes insignificant compared to the next ability. Faster than light flight. This is where the biggest problems begin. If we remove faster than light travel, the entire Viltrumite empire stops making sense. The canon never states this directly, but there are almost no other explanations for their speed. Viltrumites conquer planets across the galaxy. They maintain a massive empire. They appear in distant worlds very quickly. The problem is simple. Space is unbelievably large. The human brain struggles to understand such distances. The closest star system to Earth is Alpha Centauri. Light takes more than 4 years to travel from there to Earth, and those are our closest cosmic neighbors. For comparison, the Milky Way is around around 100,000 light-years wide, even moving at light speed, would not make galactic travel practical. Imagine an immortal warrior trying to reach another side of the galaxy. Even under perfect conditions, the journey would take thousands or even tens of thousands of years. Military expansion at that scale becomes impossible. That leaves only two options. Either Viltrumites break the fundamental laws of physics, or the world of Invincible simply does not work. Modern physics treats faster than light movement with extreme skepticism. According to the theory of relativity, serious problems appear near light speed. First, time itself changes. For a moving object, time slows down. The higher the speed, the larger the difference between the traveler and the outside observer. Even this creates a strange effect. Extreme speed starts to resemble time travel, but there is a much bigger problem. As an object approaches light speed, the energy required for further acceleration rises toward absurd levels. The faster you move, the harder it becomes to gain more speed. At some point, the energy cost becomes almost unreachable. That is why modern science considers light speed travel for massive objects nearly impossible, not just difficult. Nearly impossible, and this creates an uncomfortable question. Where does Omni-Man get the energy? Even if Viltrumites control their bodies at the atomic level, that does not solve the energy problem. Energy still has to come from somewhere. Nolan clearly does not carry an infinite power source, but let us assume Viltrumites solved that issue too. Then another problem appears: navigation. And this one may be even stranger. How does Omni-Man know where to fly? Imagine interstellar space, countless stars, extreme distances, almost no visual reference points. Even humans with telescopes struggle to navigate space quickly, but Nolan seems to do it almost instinctively. That raises another question. Can he see across light years? The series never suggests that. Some scenes even contradict the idea. For example, if Omni-Man had cosmic scale vision, he would not need to search for Mark through William. He could simply rise into the atmosphere and locate him himself. So how does navigation work? Maybe Viltrumites can sense magnetic fields, gravitational distortions, or unusual properties of space itself. That already sounds like science fiction, but it still feels more logical than I fly in the right direction and somehow find the planet. Maybe the real issue is not speed at all. Maybe the method of travel matters more. From a scientific perspective, warp movement or spatial tunnels would make more sense than direct, faster than light flight. In other words, a system that shortens distance instead of accelerating the traveler. Ironically, that sounds less insane than Omni-Man flying faster than light. According to the lore of Invincible, the Viltrumite body works far more efficiently than a human one. They age slowly. They survive extreme stress. They tire less. They can recover from devastating injuries. If we examine Omni-Man's abilities one by one, many of them no longer seem completely impossible. Humans really can become stronger through technology. Genetic engineering already allows scientists to change the properties of living organisms. We can edit DNA, improve resistance to disease, and influence tissue regeneration. Right now, those abilities are limited, but the direction of progress is already clear. In theory, an advanced civilization could create an organism that lives for thousands of years, barely feels fatigue, recovers from severe injuries, survives extreme physical stress. The real problems begin when energy enters the equation. Super strength is a question of physics, not desire. Every action requires energy. If Omni-Man delivers a punch strong enough to destroy mountains, his body must survive enormous recoil. If he stops an asteroid, there must be enough energy to alter the path of an object with astronomical mass. Physics does not care how strong you are. Its rules cannot simply be ignored. That is why the explanation "very powerful muscles" does not work here. Another mechanism is necessary, and this is why the limited telekinesis theory remains one of the few ideas that connects Viltrumite abilities into a single system. It does not sound fully scientific, but it preserves internal logic. Viltrumites are not simply strong. It is almost as if they constantly influence their own bodies. They reinforce them. They control inertia. They locally increase resistance to damage. And that leads to an interesting thought. If this theory is correct, the series probably underestimates the true danger of Omni-Man. A being capable of changing the trajectory of an asteroid the size of Texas would not look like a very powerful superhero. It would resemble a natural disaster. Every battle would become a large-scale catastrophe. In that sense, Invincible actually makes Omni-Man weaker. If we analyze him through the lens of real science, in some aspects he could be even more powerful than the show presents him. Although realistically, he probably would never reach Earth at all. Write in the comments how you explain Viltrumite abilities. What feels most realistic to you? Telekinesis, unknown physics, or another theory? This was MiliTime Fiction. Thanks for watching. See you next time.